Well, good morning, everybody. I want to take you first to the National Hurricane Center's website. It's just nhc.noaa.gov. And when you get here, I'm going to show you something that you can do with their site. So right now, of course, we've been monitoring Idalia and Franklin. We had a newly named system called Jose. We still have our eye on a couple of systems out in the tropics. One's got a 70% chance of developing, one tucked in the middle here that's got a 30%. But what I want you to do when you get to the site is to come over here and click on any individual storm. We're going to pick Idalia in this case, because the next thing you can do on this site is you can come up here and click on all of these icons telling you all the different threats and hazards. But once the system's done, we're going to click on Archive, which is right there. And it'll show you every single discussion that the National Hurricane Center had about a hurricane. But I want you to click on the Graphics Archive. And when you do that, it'll automatically bring up an animation. If you want to see how good the National Hurricane Center is, I would click right here on the 5-day forecast cone with a line. And what we're going to watch here, in fact, we'll just speed this up a little bit so you can see it a little bit quicker. But this is the forecast evolution of the entirety of Idalia from start to finish. And what I love, and just I'm amazed at the National Hurricane Center's skill, was that they had that particular spot in Florida pinned down days in advance. And this is just an incredible thing that we're capable of doing now. A decade ago, especially 2-3 decades ago, this wasn't in our wheelhouse. This was not something we could be so skillful at. So tip my cap to our ability to forecast these things. Now, that doesn't minimize the damage. It doesn't minimize the problems we had. And I just want to show you, this is one of my favorite websites. It's called poweroutage.us, and you can see any given state what the power outage looks like. So if we click here on Florida, we still have 148,000 folks without power. We had several of these counties in through this corridor yesterday that had complete power outages. If we just step back and look at Georgia, again, remember the hurricane clipped right through this part of southern Georgia, delivering a lot of rainfall. 108,000 powers without customer. And you can do this yourself. Again, poweroutage.us, and just see what this looks like. Now, if I go back to some radar data over the southeast, we can see where the center of circulation made it about 12 hours ago. From start to finish, Idalia came in about 6:30 in the morning, East Coast time right here. And then it had already exited by late that evening, yesterday evening, along the East Coast. Now, its rain was still pulling through parts of the Carolinas, but it was a quick-moving storm system. And remember, the worst, most damaging tropical cyclones, of course, they have strong winds and they have, high storm surge. But the worst in recorded history are the slow-moving, powerful hurricanes. Those are the ones that can deliver just a tremendous amount of rainfall. And it is always the flooding aspect of any hurricane that creates the most insured loss. Okay. So thinking about this and its speed through, I want to just show you what we have in terms of total accumulated precipitation. Now, this is a 3-day map. So we're looking back. So we've got the front that came through. We've got the storms along the front range. We have the potent shortwave that hit the northwest, But we can see a pretty large corridor in through here that picked up, like the WPC and the European model suggested, upwards of 6 inches of rainfall. In fact, we just knocked this back. Let's just go look at the last 24 hours. Now we can really see just the hurricane plus the big storms that were here. I'll come back to those in a second. So again, this is going to be where we had a lot of our damage into this part, because the winds were down there. We saw winds in the 30, 40, a couple of gusts up to 50 miles an hour. But the strongest winds were right here at landfall and a little bit into Georgia and Florida into southern Georgia. So again, National Hurricane Center, looking at that being a major threat. WPC nailed it. European model nailed it. The GFS eventually got down here and nailed this as well. I just look back at this and think about how successful the forecast is. Now, that's not to take away from, again, what happened in the area, but from a meteorologist perspective, this was, I'm proud of what these guys did. It's quite amazing to see that. All right, what's next? Well, we got to go have a look at where Idalia is this morning. I think you might find this interesting. So I was waiting on the sun to rise and get a couple of images here, because we could see on radar the center of circulation and some of the big convection weren't coupled together anymore. So the center of circulation is just right here, but the main convection is way off to the north. So Idalia kind of got ripped to shreds here. You take it back, you can see it was all together yesterday. We go through sunset right there. So, literally, it was sunrise to sunset. Idalia was across the southeast. The rain continued, but the center circulation was offshore. And early this morning, kind of getting split up here. And so these two things are disconnected, which is why we don't expect this to continue to strengthen. Franklin has also been downgraded as well. And if we look at some of the latest data, we expect what's left of Idalia to go where Franklin currently is, which takes it over Bermuda. Franklin's out, Idalia's out, Jose is moving north. This is what's left here of a tropical system, and the new one, a 70% chance of developing. Now, I've been making a case lately that because of the MJO's progression, so you can actually see it right now going from the Indian Ocean back out to the open Pacific, that was going to create this region in through here over the next 15 days that was going to put some sinking motion over much of South America, the Atlantic, Caribbean, Gulf, and parts of the U.S. that get these big tropical systems. And the thinking was that this was going to slow the hurricane season down a bit. Just keeping that in consideration here. Whoops, let's go back to this, sorry. Keeping that in consideration, I do want to show you that over the next 10 days, these are the areas in which we are keeping an eye on the possible development of tropical systems. So even though I'm saying it's suppressed, we can still get a system underneath it. It's just a little bit harder in the atmosphere to do that. So we're going to keep an eye out here on Africa as always, and this will always be determined by the strength and position of the Bermuda High, which typically sits right in through this area. So let's watch this one to the south. But I also want to be watching, once again, any convection that happens in Central America. It could be in the East Pacific, it could be on land, but there are some new indications that we're going to have to be watching, this area right in through here. So that's pretty far out there in the forecast. It's into the month of September, but I want to watch this area once again. Now let's get back to that satellite data, and I'm going to take you across the whole country and go back to yesterday. Because outside of Idalia, look at the smoke in the midsection of the country. Look at this one storm that blew up in the Rockies here. And then look at the deep convection. Sorry, we got a new image there. Look at the deep convection that is over Montana as that shortwave rolled through. Some of these storms did produce straight line wind damage and a little bit of hail. And as that goes through, we can see the smoke, and we can also see some new wildfire activity here in Oregon and California, where the skies were kind of cleared out. That gets me to this. This is your 48-hour forecast of vertically integrated smoke. So we continue to watch the south, where there is possibility of having more fires kind of showing up in the next couple of days. We see the deep low that's pulling the smoke forward, and we see what's going on here in terms of the deeper troughs coming in the west, taking the smoke and sliding it farther to the south. But see how it's getting to spin up there a little bit? That's very symptomatic of what this pattern is up to right now. Now, before I break fully into a discussion about where that's going, I want to bring one other thing to your attention, because I'm going to talk about where this pattern is heading, and it's that time of year where tropical systems half a world away can influence that. So just a quick reminder, should any typhoon like this one make its way over Japan and get here into the Bering Sea, most times when that occurs, we do get a major response in the jet stream. And later in the year, we worry about that inducing sharp cold fronts across the United States, big drops in temperature as the jet stream pattern becomes more amplified. So we have 3 typhoons we're keeping an eye on right now. But at present, each of them is forecast to move much more farther to the west and not make that hard turn. So if you were to see any of these clusters of potential forecast tracks make the turn, that does something a bit like this, then we'd have a bit more to talk about here. As it stands, this is what our pattern is going to look like for a while. As this resets, you're going to see broader troughs in the west. You're going to see a ridge that starts off over New Mexico and Texas and opens in this direction. And much of the forecast is going to be dominated by that for a while. So let's go have a look at it here. This is today's 500 millibar plot. So we're looking at troughs and ridges. As we play this through, we just continue to see larger ridges opening. We see this high over low setup that's a bit cut off from the main jet stream flow, which is way up here in Canada. And as a result, that trough hangs along the west coast all the way through next weekend, or this upcoming weekend, and then into middle and end of next week. So this is the ridge that sets it up. The flow's coming around and over like this. So this is going to bring heat into this area, a lot of unsettled weather into the west, and that's going to be the mainstay of it. Just looking at a quick 7-day outlook, you can see what this is going to do to the monsoonal flow, because if you pull a trough into the west, you are going to start to yank that moisture up in this direction. And as a result of that, we're going to expect to see a lot of storm activity running up the spine of the Rockies and then over toward the Great Basin. We then also expect to see more storms coming into parts of Oregon, the Willamette Valley, getting into Northern California as well out of this pattern. And there has been an increased chance of some storms here. We'll give you a kind of an idea on the timing. It's going to be about the advection or the movement of moisture out of the Gulf and what's going to draw it into this region. So let's kind of get in there and look at that. First, some high-res data. This was at 6 a.m. this morning, high-res NAM. What I want you to take note of here is as Idalia leaves, and one shortwave sneaks out of Montana into southern Saskatchewan and Manitoba. See it up there with the storms later today. Watch two other things after this. Deeper trough bringing in a lot more shower and thunderstorm activity to the northwest and eventually farther to the south. See this by Friday morning? And then throughout the day on Friday, a lot of isolated convection over parts of the south and southeast, delivering some locally heavy rainfall. This is 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, that's Central Time, and this will be the mainstay. We're going to see a lot of storms across this region due to the deeper trough that's pulling in there, okay? So getting you through the start of your weekend, let's go ahead and flip this over to the European model and see where things take off. So we've already seen up until this point. Now, a lot of flashes of green out west. We are going to watch one shortwave trough eject. Here it is. This is on Monday. It's going to come out of Nevada, go through parts of Utah, and eventually get into Wyoming. There it is. And out ahead of this, as it leaves, there's actually going to be a decent pull on some moisture out of the Gulf. So the high pressure cell's moved over, which means we're going to get some flow on its backside, returning flow to the southern part of the U.S., right here along the Mississippi. And this is going to then increase the chances next Tuesday into Wednesday of getting more storm activity here after this system yanks out and gets pulled quickly toward Quebec. Now behind this, there is a high pressure cell and some cooler air and a front that's draped here. So that's kind of the orientation of that front. And as you look at that, you're going to be able to see better chances for storms in this area according to some of the newest model runs. But over the next 10 days, if you just kind of stitch it together, there's a lot of places in throughout this area that are going to miss out on rainfall in a big way. All right, we do see better chances coming in with that system next week as it goes kind of pulled off in that direction. But outside of that, we're looking at mostly drier conditions. So to see that better, we look at the Ensemble probabilities. And what I want to tell you is what's increased is kind of this little connecting corridor in through here with the latest runs. It's still a very low chance of getting an inch of rain, but we're now just identifying better chances of rain, period, right? So this is what I've got for the next 10 days. On the drier side of it, this is the chance of getting less than half of an inch. So we can see where that ridge really stays anchored here over the southwest into the southern plains. We can see drier throughout parts of the Ohio Valley over toward the Appalachian Mountains. And this is going to be a couple of areas to be watching. Golden Triangle North, we're drier after yesterday's storms. Columbia Basin, drier as we progress forward through this month of September. From here, though, let's go take a look at the new week 2 forecast data. And not a whole lot of change overall in the forecast. The CPC did come up with a bit wetter conditions in New England, but still anchoring the dry weather right in through this region through mid-month. All right. Now, before we just think about this longer term, I do want to bring you up to speed on what's going on with our temperatures because a front slipped through last night, dropping temperatures across much of the east, anywhere between 5 to 10, 11, 12 degrees cooler than it was a day before. This morning's early morning temperatures, now at 6:30. I apologize. I recorded a little late. I didn't get into about 1:30 last night from a trip giving a talk, but you can see how cold we are right here, kind of in and around the Great Lakes. Temperatures last night, 36. That's a chilly night in parts of Wisconsin and Michigan. But that doesn't last long because we know that there is heat coming in with that ridge. So here's Thursday's highs getting into Friday. Once we pull from Friday into Saturday, that's when we start to see the heat just continue to expand into the upper Midwest. We're going to expect Sunday to be one of our hottest days compared to average. So 97 degrees right here in central Minnesota. Look at the color bar. That's 25 plus degrees above the climatological average. While that's occurring, we're going to be 10 to 15 degrees cooler in the west because of that trough. This is Monday, getting up there to Tuesday and Wednesday. So a lot of highs deep into the 90s in the Midwest, hundreds down in Texas again, 90s all across the southeast as we play this into the first full week of September. Now, the Climate Prediction Center continues to warn of the 7th through the 11th of having a risk of having excessive heat into this area. And I do expect, as I've been talking about, for the warmer than average conditions that build into the central United States and the cooler weather in the west to play through and past the middle of this month. So here's my kind of September update. I think until there's evidence to get rid of this ridge that keeps kind of flexing back and forth between this area, we're going to stay on a pattern like this. And if the jet stream lives in that regime and doesn't have anything to kick it out, then we could probably see going well past the 15th with something like this being in place. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be brief interludes to it. There's always that the models cannot capture. But it seems as though that's going to be the big idea. So while that occurs, there will be drier conditions overall. Not dry, but drier conditions. We're going to watch storm systems kind of run around the periphery of this, which is where we're going to have our wetter weather overall. I still believe that by the end of September, this pattern begins to break down. My evidence for that is movement of the MJO, tropical systems both in the Atlantic and the Pacific. And also, historically, with an El Nino building, the end of the month of September tends to get stormier. And we've talked about that this entire week. So I'm continuing to watch that very, very carefully. All right, last thing to talk about here. I do want to point out that warmth you just saw, it's not just in the European model. This is day 10 through 15 from the GFS. So we see the same pattern on all of our major models. Last thing to discuss is going to be South America. So let's zoom that back out so you can see it all. The heavier rains that have been in Brazil have kind of backed off a bit, and we're going back to what was a bit more expected. But we're looking at very heavy rain continuing down here in southern Brazil, which is this is the state of Rio Grande do Sul up to Paraná. This is Paraguay, Uruguay, and parts of Argentina. And this rain is desperately needed in this area. One thing to point out, as we talked about yesterday, we expect the monsoon to kind of come in fits and starts this year. But I received a tweet yesterday that someone said that there was a decision made by farmers. They petitioned the Brazilian government to start planting on September the 1st. Okay, so just thinking about that's tomorrow if they were able to get going. Now, it's not that I don't trust the person that tweeted it. I mean, I'm just looking it up to make sure. I've talked to my friends down here in Goiás, and I wrote a message this morning asking, is this real? Are they going to get to plant early? That would be an important thing for us, a major thing for U.S. agriculture to know if that is the case. So if I get a response back, I'll let you know, and we'll keep digging into this. If any of you do know and have the official data, just let me know. I'd like to know that. You can toss it in the comments, and I'll give those a read. I appreciate your attention again today. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Thanks.